Hi, I'm Tim Zacharias with Cougar USA and your host of Building Value. My guest today is Justin Garner with EAB. Justin has been on the podcast before, and he's just a wealth of knowledge on commissioning, tab, and commercial construction in general. So on this episode, we really dove into a topic that he's really passionate about and related to some upcoming presentations that he has, specifically with the CX Energy Conference that's happening end of April, beginning of May in San Diego. And it's really related to the coordination between MEP, or basically MEP coordination and the commissioning process. So all the things that the different stakeholders can do to improve the construction process, make it more efficient, more cost effective, and ultimately deliver a product to the owner that meets their original requirements. On Building Value, we go behind the scenes of building operations to showcase the people and products that make buildings work and the value they bring to the community. Justin, welcome back to the podcast, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim.
One of my few repeat guests, so it's a massive honor for you. I'm sure you're flattered.
Appreciate the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, glad to have you back. We're talking about CX Energy Conference today. It's happening in late April, early May this year in San Diego. It's going to be a great time to get out of Houston and get into some good weather in San Diego.
It's always nice there.
Yeah. So you've been on before, and we really kind of went into your background and about EAB. But maybe you can just give us the quick cliff notes on kind of what you're doing at EAB and what you guys have going on.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. So we talked about this before, but EAB, we're big here in the Texas market, but we're the oldest and largest independent, privately owned testing and balancing, building commissioning, and now critical environment certification firm in North America, if not the world, but definitely North America. And we're also a training provider.
Yep.
We've got a state-of-the-art training center in Houston, Texas, and we're training tab and commissioning and building, I would say, building operations as well as contractors from all over the country. Actually, even now, where we can say all over the world, because I've got a gentleman from Malaysia in the training center this week.
There you go.
Yeah,
going international.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
so
awesome.
It's been good. So we're getting real busy as you guys are on just our normal business services and the healthcare and labs and commercial building space. But the training side is really picking up as well.
Yeah, it's an extremely impressive training operation, and you haven't had a chance to go check out their lab setup, all of the training equipment. It's first class, and not a lot of places you can go and get that kind of level of hands-on training. And I just think it's awesome that y'all do that for the rest of the industry. I mean, in some cases, y'all are technically training your competition, right? So I mean, it's pretty awesome that you're doing that to elevate the whole industry.
We are, and I appreciate that. And we look at it as an opportunity to elevate the whole industry because unfortunately, probably in the next 10 years, we're going to lose 40 to 50% of the current experience in our industry, technical experience. And if we don't start doing something, we're going to have a lot of problems because with all of the energy initiatives and things like that are going on in the building services industry right now, and where the codes are going and the engineering and design side is going, you're going to need folks in our industries more than ever, and we have a shortage of people. So we've got to find a way to get people up to speed.
Yeah, unfortunately, things are getting more complicated, and we have less and less technical expertise in the market.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Definitely going to be a big need for the training. So appreciate you guys doing that. So let's talk a little bit more about CX Energy specifically. Kind of what is that organization and that conference all about?
Yes, so CX Energy, I believe, is the largest conference of commissioning related professionals, because you don't just have commissioning providers there. There's a lot of building owners there. There's design professionals, a lot of energy management folks that show up, and I don't know the numbers on the conference now, but it is the largest out there by far.
Yep.
And so it's continued to grow every single year. So there's a lot of good information from a lot of different perspectives. And we're looking forward to this year. This is more of a commissioning-centric topic, but we're always looking for ways to talk about how do we make the commissioning process more efficient, especially when we can collaborate with the construction team. And that's really
Makes
what
sense.
what Mark McGlather and I are going to be focusing on. Mark and I work together to develop some training for their team at McCarthy. So they bring people into our training center from all over the country, their MEP coordination folks and things like that. And so we're basing some of this on what we developed through that training. But we're also, I think, going to be putting some things out there that are eye-opening to the whole industry
Sure.
when it comes to costs and cost impacts from the commissioning process and the efficiencies that usually aren't there.
Yep.
And if we start doing things a little bit better, it really translates not only to better will in the industry and closer collaboration,
Sure.
but also to direct costs for everybody.
Yeah.
And that even translates to the owner, right?
Yeah, but I think probably have a little bit of time later to dig into that. But I'd love to hit back on that topic of the difference between kind of the first cost or installed cost versus that life cycle cost, and kind of how even the life cycle cost of the project and how y'all are impacting that. Because I have a feeling, if you do follow that process well, it's going to reduce all of those costs, even if the initial cost is a little bit more. So, maybe helpful for some people. I think probably a lot of people have heard about commissioning or what a commissioning agent is, but what exactly is the role of that commissioning agent in the new construction process?
Yeah, no, it's good that you bring that up. So before I can answer that, I've got to introduce the term of owner's project requirements.
Okay.
Everybody's, if you've been in this industry, if you're familiar with commissioning, you've heard of OPR.
Sure.
But that's the owner's project requirements. That's really the guideline that we go by to measure everything in the commissioning process against what's actually happening,
Sure.
right? And so we really need to have a good OPR up front. If you look at all the standards that are out there, ASHRAE and even the individual certification organizations, they're all going to relate back to that OPR. And at every stage of the process, from pre-design all the way into the occupancy operations phase, we should always be looking back at, did we achieve the OPR? And so we need a good OPR. We don't want something that's vague. We want something that defines the use of the facility the way the owner wants it. It can get very detailed. It can be a little bit more high level. But the things it has to have is, what do they need to do with the facility? What are their energy and sustainability goals? And then, are there any special occupancy and operations conditions that need to be thought of, early on, so that they can be designed into the building to have the outcomes that are desired? And also any potential down the road expansions or changes. If they know they're going to try and scale, we want to know that up front so that we can try to get it in there. And then really the commissioning provider's role is, when everybody else is focused on, the designer is going to be focused on code compliance and potentially cost. Obviously the construction team is focused on cost and then how do we deliver, right? Get through the construction process. The commissioning provider is supposed to step back and say, are we diverging from the path of the OPR? And continuously be challenging everybody. And then ultimately we get down into the late construction stage or acceptance stage. And that's where everybody's really familiar with commissioning. And we're going to functionally test everything. We're going to prove that the systems meet not only the OPR, but the design intent when you really look at the technical aspect of it. And then are we achieving at a high level the OPR? Is the owner going to be happy with this project when we turn it over? And then it also culminates in training. I mean, one of our roles is to ensure that the building gets turned over and the operations staff is trained, because if they're not trained, we can do the best commissioning process, best construction process, best design process of anything, and all of those goals can go out the window if, you live it every single day, right? If the operations team doesn't know how to run the building efficiently.
Absolutely. And you mentioned kind of diverging from the original design or OPR, and a lot of times that's where those kind of value engineering options come up. But again, one of those things I think can impact the life cycle cost of the building if you're not staying true to those intentions, design intentions, or sustainability goals of the owner. So it's a great point. I think there's a lot of times you kind of get into the minutia of like, okay, well, how do we provide this, or how are we going to make this work, or what's a different option? But to always go back and look at the big picture to make sure that you're meeting those requirements is definitely important. So huge role that the commissioning agents play outside of just what we see when we show up to do the commissioning on our own.
The functional test side that everybody sees. There's a lot more before that. A lot more before that.
So cool. So if the topic of your kind of workshop or presentation at CX Energy is MEP coordination and the commissioning process, extraordinary success or horrible failure. And I'm assuming you've seen both in your time on projects.
Unfortunately.
So, you talked about Mark a little bit already, but this is a presentation that you're doing with Mark. So maybe give a little bit about his background and then, kind of what your goals are with this presentation.
Yeah. Mark couldn't be here today. He's not based here in Houston.
We could have flown up to, is it Colorado? Right?
Yeah, it's a little cold up there.
Yeah,
he's based out of Denver. If he's there this week,
we should have done this in Denver. Yeah.
Maybe so. Next time, we'll do that next time, right?
There we go.
So Mark is the national MEP director for McCarthy Construction, which they're a national general contractor, design build provider. I mean, they're huge. And we've partnered with them, as I mentioned earlier, on the training side.
Right.
But Mark's really in charge of setting, I might get this wrong, but my understanding is he's really in charge of setting their MEP policies. Okay. So the way that the protocols they're going to follow with respect to installing or even designing, because they do a lot of design build work. So, design protocol, installation protocol, startup, getting all the way through commissioning.
Sure.
And so he and I have worked together quite a bit to really look at that process. They've done a lot of things to refine their scheduling and coordination. And then a big focus of our training is teaching his folks about the commissioning process and about how we can work together to operate it more efficiently.
Sure.
And because a lot of the problems that we have are really communication and coordination based. Most folks that are doing this, they have the technical knowledge, and especially on the McCarthy team, they do.
Sure.
But what really needs to happen is you need more detail in the scheduling and coordination piece. And there's a lot that needs to be done even in design phase that doesn't always get done or flushed out early on. And so that's what we focus on in the training. That's what our session is going to focus on. Is we're going to try and open everybody's eyes to what we're really talking about here is cost impacts.
Yep.
And if the further along in the process we wait to try to address issues and really get on the same page and coordinate, the cost curve goes up.
Yep.
At a sometimes pretty steep rate.
Significantly, yeah. It's definitely easier to do it on the front end than later in the project. So I don't want to steal all your thunder from the presentation.
No,
We still want to get people to show up and attend your presentation.
Absolutely.
But maybe a couple of teasers here. So I want to hit the high points of some of the stuff that y'all have laid out. So identifying the elements of the commissioning process that require collaboration between the provider and the contractor. So I think you kind of hit on that already, but definitely what you're saying is just a lot more than showing up and testing and confirming equipment is
absolutely. And we're really going to focus in this presentation. A lot of times we focus on the construction phase. Mm-hmm. We're gonna hit on that a little bit because we've developed some tools that can kind of open folks' eyes and get them to see the level of coordination that really needs to happen. But more than anything, we're going to be focusing very early on. So we're really going to be looking at pre-design, design phase, where we can really make those high-value impacts.
Sure.
We're going to look through the lens of design build, IPD type deliveries, because there's, we don't see some of that as much in these markets, but it's very prevalent throughout the country.
Sure.
So we're going to really look at those types of projects and some of the considerations that you have with the whole team, right? Because obviously the design team is an integral part of the overall project team. Sometimes the commissioning provider is right there, or maybe they're third party direct to the owner. It just depends. But everybody's got to work together, and so we're really going to focus the meat of our presentation in that phase. And I think that's what's going to make this unique. A lot of people have talked about, what do you do better during construction phase? How do we do functional testing better? Things like that. But it's almost too late at that point. So we're really going to kind of focus a lot further, on the front end.
Nice. Well, that was point number 2, high-level strategies for coordination and scheduling. So I already checked that box off. So number 3, identify the multiple parties involved with different mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems that must work collaboratively at different stages to deliver a successful process. And so, I mean, definitely this one hits home for me. That's usually where we get involved. But maybe talk about that one a little bit.
Yeah, so like I said, we've developed some tools for this to help the whole team, that's involved in commissioning to truly understand, because I think what ends up happening is it's not that folks don't want a good, smooth process. It's we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of the day-to-day project, and it gets very busy.
Oh yeah.
It's very dynamic, and things are sliding, especially here recently. We have all these challenges, and so folks tend to get hung up on the here and now. But what we're trying to get everybody to see is step back and look at the big picture, and let's plan. Because if we plan, then we can truly see who needs to be involved. Because how often does there's going to be an equipment startup, and we just don't have the right people there. You have somebody who may have just, they were trying to make it happen. They relied on a subcontractor. They just didn't know, and we didn't get the right people there. Now we've wasted time.
But we've also seen it where there's multiple trades that are involved that need to finish their work for that equipment to be ready for startup. Yep. And we may get a call from the plumber that says, "Hey, we have water to this fill station." We show up and there's no electrical done, right?
Correct.
So I mean, there's multiple different ways that you can kind of get to that end goal that you're talking about.
Yeah. So the tools we've developed, we're trying to kind of show who all should be involved with the common systems that give problems. So when I say that, I'm talking about major mechanical, our electrical power, emergency power systems, your large plumbing systems, things like that, fuel oil, that type of stuff, where we routinely on every single project seem to have coordination issues, right?
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, there's lots of different trades working sometimes over each other on those pieces of equipment, and it's definitely a lot to coordinate and get all timed correctly to be able to deliver on schedule and to spec. So definitely appreciate the difficulty on that one. So the last one, I think you also touched on basic MEP installation, startup testing, and training workflows that can be implemented on any project. So like you said, there seems to be kind of repeat offenders that come up. And so if you can build this or standardize on it, like you're saying, I think you do improve that value that you're bringing to the owner. Yeah,
and we are going to emphasize the training aspect quite a bit. It seems, most projects, training seems to be this box that you have to check at the 11th hour. No one wants to put the effort into it, and we're going to drive home the point that we need to start talking about training in design phase. We need to start talking about even the choices that we're making during design. Are they going to lend themselves to the way that the owner wants to operate the building?
Sure.
And then as we go through the process, we need to think about training. We need to think about the way the building's going to be operated, and then we need to culminate with a very high quality training.
Sure.
Because if we don't turn that building over, everything we did was for nothing.
Right.
If we don't turn it over where they can operate it the way it was designed and operate it long term, going back to those life cycle costs rather than upfront costs, because that's really what we're talking about. Is we're going to make decisions up front that are going to affect the life cycle and try to achieve those owner's goals. But we got to set them up for success. And if we don't train and do a good turnover and fulfill that warranty phase and really get everything where it needs to be, and even it goes into measurement and verification and some of the energy model stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're not going to go too deep. There's a lot of other really good presentations on that at this conference, right? But we're going to talk about the importance of why it's included in the process and how it ties into those final stages of the commissioning process. And it's everybody's problem. A lot of people go, well, that's not my problem. Well, it is everybody's problem. Because we're all on the hook for the performance of the building, or we should be on the hook, and that's where the codes are going. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I've done, I don't know how many different owner training kind of presentations or classes, and you go to the job site, and it's usually a couple different people, stakeholders in there. Maybe it's a GC, maybe there's somebody that is from the owner or whoever's going to take over as the tenant, but they may or may not actually be the person that's going to be there operating the building. And you go through your presentation, sometimes it's on video. And usually the only question we get at the end is, who do we call if we have a problem, right? And so, I do agree there's a lot of opportunity to improve the training, but it can't, and for me, I think it can't just end when the construction ends. Same thing with, your commissioning process. Like you want to probably do recommissioning or continual commissioning to make sure that the building is still operating where it was designed. The training has to continue too, right? Like there's no way that they can learn everything about that building right before it turns over and then be able to operate it successfully.
And the other part that we kind of hit home, and I don't think I'm spoiling anything here because I would tell it to anybody.
Spoiler alerts.
But it's the O&Ms, the O&M information is key. I mean, that's usually another just check the box. And we really emphasize, look, the O&Ms need to be approved, they need to be finished, they need to be available, and they need to be used during the training. And so then it's not just give me the contact list. Then it's let me teach you how you can do this. You know, if you want to call a resource later on, phone a friend later on, that's great. But we need to train you how to do this because you may not be able to get a hold of somebody.
Right.
Right. And you need to know how to do some of these things, and you need to know the resources that you have to lean on. And then the training needs to include the hands-on piece.
Sure.
It doesn't need to just be, I'm not going to pick on sales folks, but a lot of times we see the salesperson doing the training. And it's like, no, we need the technical, you know, a technician, a service technician, or a startup technician there as well.
Sure.
To teach the field piece, right?
Yeah.
The hands-on out in the field.
Absolutely.
And it's a combination of both on many of the systems.
Yeah, and I think kind of going back towards that life cycle cost and value piece that we've touched on. You know, I think as the design requirements and the sustainability goals get tighter, and they're wanting that higher performance out of the building, that initial upfront cost is going to be higher. That it's going to drive you into better equipment.
It is.
But if you do follow this process that you're talking about, and they are able to maintain and operate the building properly, overall life cycle cost should be significantly less than
should be
typical construction.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I would, you know, I think it's definitely a good thing to look at and to talk about with the owners is, you know, hey, there might be a little bit of sticker shock up front when you look at some of these systems, but definitely going to be saving money in the long term. And even if you just look at the life cycle of the project itself, if you can improve that coordination, the scheduling, you're going to have less callbacks, you know, less setbacks, all these other things, and you're going to improve that life cycle cost of the construction also.
Yeah, and we're even going to get into defining the scope, and because a lot of times there's scope that's vague, and so it ends up assumptions are made, and then there's creep.
Sure.
There's change orders. There's all those other things, and so you know, really focusing on some of that stuff during design phase, and then in those design build IPD deliveries, it's all tied to cost. So we're going to talk about some strategies as well about how do you get good at making decisions by knowing how to estimate cost while you're going.
Sure.
And that's a key to success as well.
Awesome. Well, anything that we missed? Any other kind of tidbits or teasers that you want to throw out there before anybody that's heading out to the CX Energy Conference?
No. I think this session speaks to a wide audience.
Sure.
You know, building owners, commissioning providers, contractors, even energy management professionals. We're going to be talking about it all.
Nice.
So I would say, you know, if you have any interest in, you know, understanding efficiency, and we're even going to be talking a little bit about where codes are going and things like that. There's a lot in this presentation. So
it's good.
I would hope that folks will come and, you know, hear us out, and then give us some feedback and ask questions, and look forward to the opportunity.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, sounds good. I think it's going to be a great conference. San Diego, I mean, couldn't pick a better place to go and get away. So definitely appreciate you coming on the show again for the second time here. Repeat guest, and definitely appreciate everybody watching and listening to this episode of Building Value, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, sir.